On today's show, the Houston Rockets secure their very first win of the NBA season behind some blistering three-point shooting, over 50% from behind the arc for the Rockets in this game. All five starters scoring at or near 20 points in this game. The bad news, though, Thompson suffering an apparent grade 2 ankle sprain in the third quarter of this game. We're going to break it all down for you coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Throw it up to Jalen Green.
Sengun here in the short row. Oh, my, that's the no-look.
Jabari for three and the win. Yeah!
Look at Tari, Eason.
Here comes Tari.
No! T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Houston Rockets select Thompson and Cam Whitmore.
One thing I have never done is not made the playoffs, and so we want to take that step here as well.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for making LOR part of your day. Thank you for being an everydayer every single day. The Houston Rockets getting their very first win of the NBA season, 128-119 against the Charlotte Hornets. And it's one of those games where it finally feels good to just be able to talk about a win, but to just kind of get it out of the way, right? They were competitive and very much in that San Antonio game, should have won it. They were competitive against the Golden State Warriors and very easily could have won that game had Steph Curry not found a way to just turn it on and rain hellfire against them in the fourth quarter. So to come away from the win in this one, and to come away in, I want to say, relatively dominant fashion, because the Hornets jumped out to an early lead in this game, and then the Rockets found themselves, they responded really quickly there in that first quarter. They led by as many as 18 in this one, 18 points in the first half, led by as many as 15 at various points in the second half. This was a relatively dominant win for the Rockets, even though they did have some moments where they let go of the rope and let the Hornets back into this game because of kind of some unforced errors, some mistakes on their end, things that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. The Rockets were largely in control of this game from about the midway point of the first all the way till the final buzzer. Even though there were moments the Hornets kind of looked like they were getting back into it, the Rockets pretty much had this one under wraps throughout the entirety of this game. It felt good to have a win where they weren't fighting from behind or are they going to be able to get back into it, that kind of thing. A lot to kind of unpack from this game. The hot three-point shooting and kind of the distribution of the scoring effort for the Rockets over the course of this game. We've got a couple different post-game quotes from Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks that I want to get to about how they're utilizing Alperen Sengun and some of the mental lapses that we witnessed in this game. I want to talk about some of the downsides of this one, some of the issues rebounding the ball, as well as the turnovers, because those are serious problems that have to be addressed moving forward. But I do think right out of from the jump here, I like what we saw out of the Rockets because this was easily their best offensive performance of the season. It kind of gives you a glimpse as to what this team can be when they're not struggling as much as they have been offensively. Now, this is not the type of production we can expect from them every single night. That's unfair. No team shoots 50% from three every single night. Again, the Rockets were shooting a ridiculous 56.8% from downtown, 21 of 37 from behind the arc in this game. Across the starters, Jabari was 3 of 5, Dillon was 3 of 3, LP hit his only 3-point attempt, Fred was 5 of 10, Jalen was 4 of 8. As That's not going to happen routinely. But when you do see the starters, namely Fred, Jalen, and Jabari, when they're hitting their shots, when they're on. Now, Fred's the most consistent of those three, but very specifically Jalen and Jabari. When those two guys are on and hitting their three-point shots, it opens up so much more for the rest of the offense. And we kind of saw that play out in this game, right? Those guys hitting their shots allowed a little bit better spacing offensively. It opened up driving lanes. It just made life easier when those shots are going down. Now, again, it's not fair to expect them to shoot 56% every single game, but this was kind of I thought they had a really well-balanced kind of scoring approach in this one. Early on, first quarter, it was Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green. Fred started this game incredibly hot. I mean, Fred had a heat check three-pointer, very early on in the first quarter where he pulled up from about it felt like 28, 30 feet, well behind the three-point line and just absolutely drained it. Jalen Green had a bunch of buckets early in that first quarter. Fred, I believe, finished the first quarter with 13 points, if I'm not mistaken. I want to get that math right. Double check. Yeah, Fred had 13 in the first quarter. Jalen had 11, and that was a big part of the Rockets building up that early first quarter lead, ending the first quarter with a 12-point lead, 39-27. That second quarter, though, is where some of the problems started to rear their ugly head. The Rockets' offense was not very great in that quarter. They started settling for some less than high quality shots offensively. They had some mental lapses here and there defensively. The free throw line box out issue that led to a wide open dunk. At one point, just before halftime, after the Rockets had let that lead of 18 slip away and get down to 2 points, their lead was diminished all the way down to 2 points. Ime Udoka called a timeout and was furious. He went straight over to Jalen Green and was tearing into him about some of the lazy offensive possessions, the mistakes on defense. And Jalen came back out of that timeout and with a much renewed energy, a better focus in the game. That second quarter, that was where the scoring drought kind of set in for the Rockets. Charlotte took that quarter 31-22. Nobody really stepped up for Houston scoring-wise in that quarter. Fred had a couple threes. He was, the high point man with 6 points. Jeff Green had 5 off the bench in that quarter, but nobody really showed up in that second quarter. Whereas you go back to, halftime, Ime Udoka talks to the guys. They come out with much better energy in the third quarter, and they have a much, much better overall frame. Jabari had 10 points, and he was huge in that third quarter. Dillon Brooks had 8 points in that frame. So again, kind of an equal opportunity scoring load for the guys across the board. And then to close things out, Jalen Green started with that hot first quarter. He was kind of MIA for the middle part of the game. He had a 3 at one point, I believe, in that third quarter as well. But he was really cold for the 2 middle quarters of this game. And then he showed up in a huge way in the end of this game, very specifically the end of the game. He hit a big time 3-pointer. He had a layup, hit some free throws, had the huge dime to a rolling Alperen Sengun, who put the exclamation point on this game with a huge thunderous slam. I mean, he brought that thing all the way back to Turkey and yammed it home. Shout out to Ryan Hollins for the call on the broadcast. But I thought the Rockets did a good enough job offensively in this game to mask some of the issues that they had kind of across the board, because they actually, in this game, they had a lot of the similar issues that they had against the San Antonio Spurs, the offensive rebounding and second chance points, as well as the turnovers. But this just goes to show that a strong offensive performance can negate and kind of hide some of those other weaknesses across the board. So I want to get into some of those specifics, some individual performances, some other things that stood out about this Houston Rockets win. We can be happy about the win, but there are still things that have to improve for this team to get to where it wants to be this season. We'll explore some of those issues coming up in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling against thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players and their stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entries in less than 60 seconds. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes PrizePicks the #1 DFS operation in North America. And with basketball season here, you can make combo projections across football and basketball from their Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you could do LeBron James and Travis Kelce for a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. So if you've been debating whether you want to check out daily fantasy sports and get into it somehow, try PrizePicks. You got to check them out. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's $100, and all you have to do is use code LockedOnNBA. So prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA or use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Want to go ahead and anoint your Locked On Rockets player of the game from this one, and it'll be your point guard of the squad, Fred VanVleet, in this game. 22 points on 8 of 17 shooting. He was a blistering 5 of 10, 50% from behind the three-point line. Had 3 rebounds, 11 assists, and only 2 turnovers. Was a +14, the best plus-minus of the Rockets starters in this game. Second best plus-minus overall on the team. His second 2010 game of his very short Houston Rockets career. A really fantastic bounce-back performance from Fred VanVleet, who was incredibly critical of his lackluster performance against the Golden State Warriors. It was great to see him kind of come out gunning in this game, leading the charge early. And, you know, he's really developing a great chemistry and feel for playing with Alperen Sengun. So I got the chance to ask Fred post-game about the times where we see the Rockets really trying to feed Alp down low.
There have been some moments that we've seen where you guys have kind of gone to a steady diet of Alp in the post. Is that a decision that Ime makes? Is that something, a call that you make live on the floor of, hey, we want to keep going back to him?
Yeah, both. I think we both had a good feel for the game, and again, coming down the stretch where you just need a bucket and you got to get a good shot off. I think, you know, we feel pretty good with him down there on that block against pretty much anybody. And if they send help, he's a good and willing passer. So we're able to get quality shots coming down in the fourth quarter. So continue to just hammer that away. And he was doing a great job in the first half of setting screens and getting guys open, especially getting myself open. So you got to try to find that balance to reward him as well. And I thought he did a good job making plays in the second half.
So Fred highlighting kind of some of the play, some of the contributions there from Alperen Sengun. There are a couple things that really stand out from what he said. So first off, you know, when I asked him about, you know, whose call is it to go back to Alp, he said both, right? So it's not only that Fred has the confidence to go to Alp on the floor making those decisions, but also that Ime and that the coaching staff have the confidence in Alperen Sengun to kind of those stretches where we see the Rockets making it a point to feed Alperen Sengun down low. Those are calls that, you know, everybody is on board with. And Fred made a great point that, you know, Alp is the guy who offensively, he's involved in like every action on the floor, right? Whether it's in dribble handoff sets, whether it's as a primary screener, all that stuff. And he talking about the fact that they have to try and find a balance to reward Alperen Sengun when he's doing all that dirty work offensively, setting those screens, opening guys up. He did a fantastic job over the course of this game, opening things up offensively for Fred VanVleet, for Jalen Green, for Jabari Smith Jr. on the offensive end, setting those screens. So for them to, you know, have moments in this game, especially late in this one, where they kind of went to a little bit of that steady diet of Alp down low in that fourth quarter, posting him up. We saw, you know, Mark Williams is a guy who's caused this Rockets team a lot of trouble in the past. And when I tell you Alperen Sengun ate against Mark Williams in this game, he had no answer for Sengun. Mark Williams finished this game with just 9 points and 6 rebounds. Alp was utterly dominant, and they had no response for him. Alp had 19 points on 9 of 12 shooting, 75% from the floor. He had 7 rebounds, 4 dimes, and a steal, only 1 turnover in his 27 minutes of run. Now, I did see some people after the game wondering, okay, well, if Alperen was playing so well, why did you only get 27 minutes? I mean, I think there were some other lineups that the Rockets were running out there, some very switchy lineups where you had, some Jock Landale minutes, some Jeff Green minutes. Overall, I didn't have really many issues with how Ime kind of did his substitution pattern in this game. I thought overall it kind of worked. Maybe a little bit less on the Jock Landale minutes because he was a little rough around the edges, especially offensively in this game. Just 1 of 7 shooting, had an offensive foul. He had 5 rebounds, 4 points. Not an overall great showing for Jock Landale in his return to the lineup, but this is his first game back after being in the concussion protocol. So, give him a chance to knock off the rust. Maybe that's more so what Ime wanted to do after riding Alp so heavily the last few games. Maybe wanting to give him a little bit, less burn in this one. Whatever. Alp had a really strong game against a matchup that has actually caused the Rockets some trouble in the past. So that was really encouraging to see. And again, for Fred to just identify, hey, we have confidence in Alp. When you need a bucket, we know that we can go to him, and highlighting the fact that he is a capable and willing passer. Just very high praise coming from the Houston Rockets floor general, the former all-star on the team, all that, the leader of this team, to highlight what Alp brings for this Rockets basketball team. I thought it was a really great set of quotes from Fred VanVleet, and it kind of shows that the coaching staff, VanVleet, and this team have a lot of confidence in Alp being one of their go-to guys, especially down the stretch of a game when you desperately need to get a high-quality shot, or when you just need a bucket. Alp can kind of be that guy for this team. Now, some of those issues that we talked about, the offensive rebounding leading to 22 second chance points for the Charlotte Hornets, kind of across the board, a lot of opportunities that they got. Mark Williams had some offensive boards. Nick Richards off the bench had 4 offensive rebounds, a smattering of offensive boards elsewhere. Gordon Hayward had a couple. Terry Rozier had a couple. Some discipline kind of issues. Ime Udoka talked about pregame, the need for this team to gang rebound. And that's a topic that I brought up multiple times throughout the early part of the season. When you are a little bit undersized, you have to gang rebound, right? You have to throw a body on somebody. And, there have been moments, some mental lapses, where we haven't seen the Rockets really focused on what they need to be doing as far as, the little things, right? Like putting a body on somebody, boxing out, making sure where your guy is, picking up a man in transition, these little mental lapses. And so I asked Dillon Brooks about some of the mental lapses we saw in this game specifically.
There were a couple moments, some mental lapses, the free throw line box out, the one where LaMelo got the wide open 3. How do you eliminate those moments?
You go through with them on the film. I feel like it's the same guys that are doing that. Slowly we'll realize that we can't give up those type of momentum pushes. I guess those shots will change the game with good teams. We already know that. So just watch it on film and be better the next game.
Accountability in full force from Dillon Brooks, not pulling any punches when he says, I feel like it's the same couple guys doing that. Speaking very directly about Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. Jabari Smith Jr. at fault on the free throw line box out error, and then much to the chagrin of Fred VanVleet, who immediately threw his hands up and was like, what the hell, on that play. And then Jalen Green, who flubbed the pickup of LaMelo Ball. And I even asked Jalen what happened on that possession. He explained how he and Jabari had a miscommunication, but that LaMelo was supposed to be his pickup on that possession, where LaMelo walked the ball up after an Alperen Sengun free throw, and just drilled a wide open 3, because this was a half court possession where he just walked the ball up and walked right into a 3-pointer. Like, those types of critical errors you cannot make. Again, the Rockets 3-point shooting, the blistering 56.8% 3-point shooting, masked a lot of errors in this game, but those are things that they're going to have to clean up. And shout out to Dillon Brooks for, calling it how he sees it. And you can bet if he's calling it out in real time, right? You can bet that Ime Udoka, Fred VanVleet, Dillon Brooks, they are calling out these mistakes. And thankfully, we're seeing them few and far between, right? They are, Jabari and Jalen are starting to clean up their games. But some of those mental lapses, some of those moments where they just aren't fully locked in every single possession, every moment that they're on the floor, those are those moments that other teams can take advantage of. And a good team like the Golden State Warriors, like the possession where they messed up the switch and Steph Curry got the first three-pointer going of the 4 that, the avalanche that let him kind of take over the game. It's those types of errors, those types of mistakes that you just can't have against the good teams, because they will then snowball and be able to get back into a game. So I like Dillon Brooks highlighting that. And overall, this game, Dillon Brooks was, I thought, spectacular in this game. He had 20 points on 7 of 9 shooting, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals, which was a career high in steals for him. Even he was shocked after the game because he thought that his career high would have actually been higher in steals, where he's had some games where he felt like the team was just gift wrapping him the basketball. He did have 7 turnovers in this one, but it was like a weird 7 turnovers where I genuinely felt like some of the turnovers that he had were absolutely not his fault. Like, he had a couple miscommunications at one point, or at various points, with Jae'Sean Tate, one where they were walking the ball up and Dillon tried to, push the ball ahead to Jae'Sean Tate, and Tate just wasn't even looking for the pass. Tate was running to the corner trying to fill a spot on the floor. Just some miscommunication. There was another one later, like just some weird turnovers from Dillon Brooks, 7 of which is pretty uncharacteristic, I would say. And really the only blemish on an otherwise really, really strong overall game. Some really strong defensive possessions. And again, a surprising amount of playmaking in the half court. I think that should be one of the major takeaways from this game is the Rockets' ability to share the basketball. The ball movement was absolutely incredible in this game across the board. They had 35 assists on 44 made shots. And that's one of those things where Fred talked about it post-game, where usually the adage is, shooting is infectious, right? Where, one guy starts shooting the ball well, the whole team starts shooting well. But passing can also be infectious, right? You get 1 or 2 guys passing the ball well, and then everybody's sharing the basketball. And that led to some really high-quality offense for the Rockets in this game, where they were generating some really good looks. It wasn't like they were fighting tooth and nail and dealing with these really contested shots and they were having to grind for all the looks they were getting. No, they generated. Now, granted, the Hornets are just kind of a bad defensive team, but they generated a lot of really good looks, really high quality offense in this game. And a big part of that was the passing, the facilitating across the board. Fred VanVleet at the forefront of that, but Jabari had 4 assists, Dillon had 5 assists, Sengun had 4 assists, Jalen had 3 assists. Off the bench, you had Jae'Sean Tate with 5 dimes in this one, who was a team high plus 17 in his 19 minutes played. And overall, really, really good performance from the team as far as just sharing the basketball and passing up good shots for great shots. So coming up, want to get into some final thoughts from this game, as well as the unfortunate news of Amen Thompson's injury and kind of who we can expect the Rockets to lean on in his absence. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins, and all you have to do is wager $5. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action right now. You can even go take a look at the outright betting favorites for Super Bowl 58. The Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs both at plus 500 to win it all this year. You got the San Francisco 49ers right behind them at plus 600. And then rounding out the top 5, you have the Miami Dolphins at plus 950 and the Dallas Cowboys at plus 1,000. You got to check it out. They've got so many betting options. The app is so easy to use. They've got spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So go explore it. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started this NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Talking the Rockets' first win of the season, 128-119 against the Charlotte Hornets. Now, this is a young team, and while you're not going to be able to rely on the insane three-point shooting every game, and while I do think the defense kind of slipped a little bit in this one, some of the defensive principles that we had seen from this Rockets team, giving up 119 points, giving up some of the wide open threes that the Charlotte Hornets were able to get in this game, because I mean the Hornets weren't any slouch either. They shot 40% from three, 11 of 27, and the Rockets kind of gift wrapped them some wide open looks here and there, unfortunately due to some blown coverages, but I think you can build on the ball movement from this game moving forward. That's an important thing that I hope the Rockets can take from this game and apply to other games moving forward. The unselfishness with the basketball, the drive and kick game looked really good in this one, where you had multiple guys breaking down a defense. Jalen, Fred would get in, Jalen would get in, Dillon was driving and kicking. Off the bench, you had Jae'Sean Tate, Jeff Green, Amin Thompson. Like, all these guys were driving and kicking, collapsing the defense, and then sharing the basketball with the rest of their teammates, which led to some really, really good offense. So that is something that they can hopefully build upon from this game. But a couple other thoughts from some of the individual performances in this one. Jabari Smith Jr. turning it on in a big way there in that third quarter, had a 10-point quarter overall for the game, 17 points on 7 of 10 shooting, 3 of 5 from the three-point line. He had the 6 boards, the 4 assists, had a block at one point on PJ Washington from the three-point line. Just an overall solid game from him. Had some really high quality defensive possessions where I thought he moved his feet really well on certain switches, and that's always an encouraging sign to see from Jabari Smith Jr., because at times it feels like he's not getting low enough in his defensive stance and not anticipating kind of keeping up with smaller players on the perimeter. But I thought he did a good job, especially at times on LaMelo on switches in this game. For Jalen, I kind of already talked about it a little bit, but just his, started out hot, was cold in the middle, and then showed up in a big way to close out this game. And that sometimes that's all you need, right? You show up at the end of the game, and it was kind of a thing where at various points in this game, other guys were handling kind of the scoring burden. And so maybe he didn't need to step up there in that second and third quarter to pick up that scoring load. But to see him show up with, 9 points, I believe, in the fourth and final frame, that was a pleasant sight to see after kind of his struggles through the middle part of this game after the hot start. And off the Rockets bench, Jeff Green was instrumental in this win. And it's been weird because I feel like some Rockets fans, like, eye test has, or not eye test, but just there have been some Rockets fans like, oh, well, why is Jeff Green getting these minutes, or, what have you, or Jeff Green hasn't been doing anything, or pointing out like his plus minus has been bad or something. Well, like the units that he's basically played with have been bad. But he kind of got to go back to a bit more of his natural role, right? Playing kind of the pseudo small ball 5, the secondary big on the floor, going back to that 4 spot, playing alongside, Jock, Landale, Alperen Sengun, rather than exclusively being the small ball 5 on the floor. He had 9 points, 2 boards, on 2 of 3 shooting, and moves the ball really well. Didn't rack up any assists, but was definitely, a guy who was capable of, some drive and kick actions in this game. Really liked what he brought to the table for the Rockets. And Jae'Sean Tate, who continues to just be an absolute workhorse off the Houston Rockets bench. He only had 4 points on 1 of 5 shooting. There was Tate was really good in the first half, and then there were some points, late just before halftime when the kind of the collapse started happening. And then, there were some spots in the third quarter with some questionable decision making, maybe some forced offense from Jae'Sean Tate. At one point he was trying to get Jalen Green the basketball, on a possession as things were winding down, and there was just like no urgency from Jalen trying and get the basketball. So it's like Jae'Sean clearly was trying to get Jalen the ball, and Jalen couldn't create any separation from his man. It led to a really ugly rush drive on the right side where Jae'Sean tried to drive it in and dunk it with his right hand, his off arm, against a stacked Hornets defense. So it's like, what are you doing on that possession? It's hard to blame him though, because when you're alpha scorer, when you're the guy who's supposed to have the ball in his hands to close out, a quarter, to close out a possession, can't even get free to get the basketball, then what else are you supposed to do? You've got to try and make something happen. So he drove it in. So it's like, I'm not trying to fault him for that one. But he did have some really fantastic plays in this one. He's a guy, it just matches the eye test, right? His hustle, his energy is infectious. He helps this team. He plays winning basketball. He does. He's an impactful player. 6 boards, 5 dimes off the bench for Jae'Sean Tate in this one. Again, a team high plus 17. And he had a filthy dime to Amin Thompson, the second time already that those two have connected on a lob pass. The first one was, a baseline cut from Amin Thompson. This one happening in transition. But those two have I feel like they're developing a good chemistry playing alongside each other, which they need because they're both non-shooters. And so, when they're out there together, it does kind of muck up the spacing a little bit, but you can nullify that to an extent if those two can be on the same page as far as cutting and moving without the basketball and being able to feed each other that way on the offensive side of the floor. Because defensively, they bring it with those lineups. When you have the lineup out there of Fred VanVleet, Amin Thompson, Jae'Sean Tate, Dillon Brooks, and it doesn't even matter who your five is. It can be LP, it could be Jock, it could be Jeff Green, it could be Jabari. That four-man lineup where you've got two great point-of-attack defenders in Fred and Amin as your guards, and then you've got two elite wing defenders in Dillon Brooks and Jae'Sean Tate. Those defensive lineups look really, really, really good. And that brings us to Amin Thompson in this one because, damn, it's really unfortunate. Like, he was running out, running out on a transition play and, he basically stepped on, or running after a loose ball, I guess, trying to contest a loose ball in transition and stepped on the ankle of a Hornets player and just completely rolled his right ankle. Now, the good news is this is a different ankle injury than the one he suffered in Summer League. Summer League was his left ankle. This is his right ankle, so it's not like a repeat of the same injury. It's not like he's got, another bad injury on the same ankle, so that's at least a silver lining there, some good news. Ime Udoka, when I asked him post-game if he had an update on Amin Thompson, he did say it was a grade 2 ankle sprain. I don't know how they know that so quickly because I don't know if they had an MRI machine in-house or if they took him straight to the hospital for, evaluation right away or what. But that was what Ime reported it as, and that was the exact injury that they reported back during Summer League that held Amin Thompson out for a chunk of the offseason, unfortunately. So we're probably looking at a 4 to 6 week absence for Amin Thompson, which is really disappointing for a variety of factors. One, obviously, you hate to see injuries happen to anybody. Two, it's his rookie season. He's only 4 games in. He was just starting to get a feel for things. And now this is a huge setback, right? Because now he's going to be out for at a minimum of a month. And then he's going to have to come back and try to work his way back into the rotation down the line. And as a rookie, that can be incredibly hard. So obviously wishing a speedy recovery for Amin Thompson. He was on crutches at, post game when we saw, we were in the locker room. We saw a pair of crutches at his locker. So, at least he was able to walk up, and put weight on it after, being on the floor and kind of pounding the floor in pain with his fist. He stood up and he didn't want to put any weight on it at first. And that looked like a really severe injury. And then eventually he was able to, after getting some assistance and getting off the court, he was able to walk off under his own power, which is a good sign. So hopefully it's, he returns sooner rather than later, but that's another devastating blow to an already shorthanded Houston Rockets bench because you just got Jock Landale back from concussion protocol, but now you lose Amin Thompson. So now you're down Tari Eason, who should be up for evaluation soon. You're missing Amin Thompson. You were already missing a scoring punch off the bench. Now your guard depth is incredibly limited because, again, you had 3 primary ball handlers in Fred, Jalen, and Amin, and now Amin is gone. So who do the Rockets turn to in this? Do they smash the glass in case of emergency and pull the trigger on a panic trade to go get somebody? That is a distinct possibility at this point because it's going to be a month with no Amin Thompson, and we already know the bench is in some desperate need of some support anyway, so maybe now this expedites the process on Rafael Stone going out and finding a trade, going out and maybe getting a combo guard type or somebody that can help add some scoring punch, some additional ball handling to that Rockets second unit. But I will say, in the meantime, I wouldn't mind seeing some more Aaron Holiday minutes. I had been kind of campaigning ever so slightly for some Cam Whitmore minutes. Cam, I would still like to see play some minutes as well. I think situationally, Cam can be, could be that scoring punch that the second unit needs. But Aaron Holiday is just a nice steadying force for this Rockets team. There was a point where Ime was running kind of the all-veteran lineup, top of the fourth quarter, and that lineup was able to just kind of keep the ball moving, keep the scoreboard going, and keep the lead coasting there in the fourth quarter. The Aaron Holiday, Fred VanVleet, Jae'Sean Tate, Jeff Green, Jock Landale lineup was kind of the all-veteran lineup for this Rockets team. And Aaron Holiday is a guy that I think you can play with either of Fred VanVleet or Jalen Green. You are really small when you play Holiday and VanVleet together. But in this game, he stepped in, next man up mentality. He hit a couple big 3-pointers for the Rockets. He had a rebound. He had an assist. And he's a nice, steadying veteran presence. Like, he doesn't try to overstep his boundaries. He doesn't do more than he's supposed to. And he's a guy that can, run the offense in a pinch, but he's also much better off ball where you can put him in the lineup. He gives the Rockets some additional shooting, which has been an issue for this team. So maybe there's a world where we see moving forward Aaron Holiday get those backup guard minutes, and even more staggering between Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, where Jalen becomes kind of more of a primary ball handler now in his minutes on the floor, where he shares some time with Aaron Holiday, and then Fred VanVleet is out there running the show in his minutes. It'll be interesting to see what direction Ime Udoka goes, because now he's going to have to find even more minutes to fill off of an already shorthanded Houston Rockets bench. Again, speedy recovery, hopefully, for Amen Thompson, and we'll see what happens with the Rockets front office and how they decide they want to address this bench situation, because it needs something. They can't just let this thing ride out and see what happens, because the Rockets are going to be looking down the barrel of a lot of losses if they don't supplement their bench with something, and soon. So with that, those are final thoughts from this Rockets 128-119 win against the Charlotte Hornets. Good to get the first win under their belt, get it out of the way, and hopefully this allows them to kind of snowball into some wins. Should be a pair of exciting games coming up against the Sacramento Kings. We'll have a few episodes out between now and the next game on Saturday night, so be on the lookout for those. But as always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.